And on the wrap, ISIS is now targeting the organizer of that Texas Draw the Prophet Muhammad contest, Pamela Geller, after what the White House has called an attempted terror attack. We have the details coming up. Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton finally speaking out on President Obama's executive order on immigration with a message that completely contradicts herself. And the debate is on. Should police wear body cameras or not? We've got all that, plus potluck, yay or nay. This is the Daily Wrap, live from New York City. And welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Joe Concha, joined by, as always, Sirius XM radio host and Forbes columnist, my co-host, Rick Unger. To his right, Power House attorney and prudent pundit.
Got it right today.
Heather Hansen. Yes, alliteration is key here. And finally, she's an award-winning television host and now the editor of JaneUnchained.com, Jane Velez Mitchell. Lots happening, everybody. Let's get right to the Daily Download. And we begin tonight with the investigation of what the White House has called an attempted terrorist attack in Texas. Intelligence officials now looking into a claim from ISIS that it was behind the attack on a Draw the Prophet Muhammad contest in the Dallas suburb of Garland. The two gunmen, Elton Simpson and Nadir Sufi, were both shot and killed by police. In that claim of responsibility, ISIS also apparently targeted the organizer of the contest, Pamela Geller, president of the American Freedom Defense Initiative, saying, quote, "Our aim was Pamela Geller and to show her that we don't care what land she hides in or what sky shields her. We will send all of our lions to achieve her slaughter." No hyperbole there. As you may have heard this week, Geller has been unapologetic for staging the provocative event and says she wants to hold more of them in the future.
I will not abridge my freedom so as not to offend savages. And we weren't denigrating the religion. Political cartoons is political opinion. And when you seek to impose the Sharia restrictions of Islam on free speech, that is a political movement. Yeah,
but some prominent conservatives are questioning the wisdom of holding the event. Evangelist Franklin Graham says organizers had the right to hold the contest, but, and we quote, "Just because we have the right to do something doesn't make it right. As a Christian, I'm offended when people mock my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Muslims are offended when people mock their faith. I disagree with Islam, but just because I disagree, I'm not going to mock them or resort to violence. We need to show respect to people of other races and beliefs. What happened to civility and respect?" And now Donald Trump, of course, weighing in, saying, and we quote, "You know, I'm one that believes in free speech probably more than she does. What's the purpose of this? She's taunting them. I don't know. Maybe she likes risk. What the hell is she doing?" Very Trump-esque. In that same message that targets Geller, ISIS claims that it has 71, quote, trained soldiers in 15 states inside the United States. It specifically names Virginia, Maryland, Illinois, California, and Michigan. A poll conducted by national pollsters, McLaughlin and Associates, finds that nearly 3 of 4 Americans are worried ISIS will strike here if the terror group isn't stopped in the Middle East. Joining us now from Washington, D.C. is former CIA and DIA official Fred Fleitz. Fred is also the senior fellow at the Center for Security Policy, and Fred will be joining us momentarily, so I'm going to turn to the panel instead. Mr. Unger, you've said in the show in the past you're not a fan of Pamela Geller, but are you a fan of her right to free speech?
Yes, I am, but you know, rare is the time where I find myself on the same side as Franklin
Donald Trump.
Or Donald Trump.
I was going to say, Rick, you're in good company.
It's remarkable. I couldn't agree with the Reverend's statement more. It's exactly the way that I see it. I think she has the absolute right to do what she did, and I think it's absolutely terrible that she did it because it disrespects other people's religion. Do I think she should be targeted for it, for death? Absolutely not. Of course not. You know, it's ridiculous. And you know, it's interesting. We still don't really know if ISIS was responsible for this or not. Nobody seems to have concluded it. What we do know is that they really did put up that post threatening to do more damage here.
Of course, they're taking advantage, obviously, of all the media coverage that Pamela Geller wanted and now is receiving and is jumping on the fact. What's amazing about this, and you touched on this in the beginning, the war on this isn't right or left. You have a lot of conservatives,
Yeah.
like a Bill O'Reilly, for instance, who differs from a Megyn Kelly or a Sean Hannity, and some are staunchly for free speech no matter what, and others are saying, what are you doing to provoke this? Where do you fall, Heather Hansen?
Oh boy, Rick and I were talking about this a little bit before the show. I just don't like victim blaming. I think that when we blame the victim, here Pamela Geller, as opposed to focusing on the violence that was involved here, we make a mistake. I think that the analogy can be made to blaming the victim when it comes to rape. Well, why did you dress that way? Some people find it offensive. Some people find it provocative. Some people find it a temptation. And it becomes a dangerous, dangerous road to go down. But I also think that it's a little bit worrisome to me that we're talking so much about the threat against Pamela Geller. A month ago, the same group came out with a threat against 100 servicemen here in the United States who had dropped bombs or been pilots involved in those things. We talked about it and then it went away. These servicemen and any threat against them and their families should be just as worrisome and something that we're just as focused on as this issue with Pamela Geller.
I think it is.
The Westboro Baptist Church legally has the right to do the horrible things they do at servicemen's funerals. Doesn't mean that we have to agree with them or call it smart. This was a dumb move. And I will say this, overall, we're giving ISIS so much publicity. They're getting millions of dollars in free publicity, and we're building them up into this glamorous horror show villain, when in reality, they're probably a lot more feeble, and these 71 trained terrorists are probably just a bunch of emotionally disturbed people with handguns somewhere in the United States. So we should stop giving them free publicity, because we're building them up into something that's far more terrifying than they have to be.
So you're in the inspirational more than the operational camp. In other words, these guys acted on being inspired by ISIS, but not necessarily by orders or trading back and forth, which has basically been said.
The problem is that may turn out to be wrong. I hope you're right. May turn out to be wrong, but we shouldn't confuse the two issues. Every one of us, I believe, certainly is not willing to allow ISIS to do anything in this country, and we'd like to stop them everywhere else in the world. I know I would. But that is a different issue than the issue of what Pamela Geller chooses to do, even though she has a right to do it.
Well, we do have Fred Fleitz now. Once again, Fred is also the senior fellow at the Center for Security Policy, also a former CIA and DIA official. So, Fred, what do you make of the Islamic State's threat that they will send their lions after Pamela Geller?
Well, it's good to be here. I think this is typical. I think this attack in Texas was clearly an ISIS attack. There are ISIS-affiliated characters in Somalia and Australia who called for attacks on this center in Texas in advance. And I think the issue here is free speech. When there was a picture of a vat of urine in a New York art museum, and another picture of the Virgin Mary smear with elephant dung, the New York Times celebrated this as free speech and went after people who try to shut down the art exhibit. This is free speech, and I think we have to make a firm stand that you can't kill people who disagree with you. They want to exempt Islam from the Western concept of free speech.
Fred, it's Rick Unger. You know, it's interesting you brought up the New York Times article. You're absolutely right in what you say about that. And I will tell you that I disagreed with the Times then and I disagree with them now. Disrespect of others' religions is just that. It's disrespectful. It's not necessary. I did not approve of those works of art for one moment. So that's that issue. But I am curious about how you came to the conclusion that what happened in Texas was definitely ISIS, when it may have been, but nobody seems to have put together the evidence to back that up. I'm wondering if you know something you can tell us that the rest of us don't know.
Well, two things, Rick. I think you and I agree. And look, I would never participate in a Muhammad drawing contest. I agree that that's offensive. But I will defend the right of people to do that, even though I think it's inappropriate.
I get it.
I think the evidence is fairly clear from Twitter messages that there were ISIS-associated individuals who were encouraging attack on this event in Texas. There's also, I mean, where did these guys in Arizona get the idea of going to Texas to attack this? I think these characters who are affiliated with ISIS put them up to it, and I think as this is further investigated, we'll find more evidence of that.
Fred, we wish we had more time to talk to you. Unfortunately, we're up against it, but let's have you back real soon. I have a feeling we'll be discussing this topic and ISIS in general more. So thanks so much for joining us on short notice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Coming up next, Hillary Clinton finally speaking out on the president's executive order on immigration. And should illegal immigrants get in-state tuition prices for college? Lots to talk about. Stay right there. We'll be right back in just a moment.